That's the wrong background. That's not a good start at all, is it? For some reason, I'm not hearing the music either. There it is. I knew it was there somewhere. My apologies. We don't want Halloween. We want a bit of Christmas. Bear with me 1 second while I find the right one. That's the one we're after. Kind of indicative, that is. So, yeah, well, hang on. Let me start again. Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Hope you're all fit and well. Welcome to show 851, the penultimate show of 2024. And as I've just clearly demonstrated, I need a break. I slept part of last night on the sofa because my other half was having what I would politely describe as a restless night. Snoring like a caged beast she was. She's still ill, so I'm going to make allowances. But I woke up this morning, put the kettle on, then stood there, and I mean this, I'm being absolutely serious. I stood there trying to remember how to make a cup of instant coffee. That's a real thing. I couldn't remember how to make coffee. That's how knackered I am. So, yeah, one more show to come after today. And then I may well sleep through Christmas. If you don't hear from me at all on Christmas Day or Boxing Day or New Year's Eve, it's because I'm asleep. I do apologise for that in advance. But yeah, it's been a long, long old year. Let's have a look. Let's go through the chat before we get any further. Jim Turner was hot off the mark this morning. In fact, I think he actually pressed his go live button at the same time as I did. Good morning, Jim. Thank you for being here, my friend. Alex Latham is here as well. Always good to see Alex here. Dan Cullen, Dan the man, is in the house. Peter McKenna. Peter McKenna is watching live. Always better when Peter's here. Morning, Peter. Mark Whiting is here. No show is complete without Mark Whiting. Peter McKenna says, sick note again. Yes, I'm afraid so. Still dredging out the old nicknames, I'm afraid. Dan Cullen says, got bad coverage and bloody freezing after torrential rain last night in Gloucester. Mr. Foster, who went to Gloucester in a shower of rain, and then something happened. I can't actually remember. Gary Muirhead, looking forward to show 1000 next year. I've done some very quick maths. I'm doing something for tomorrow. I'm not going to do a morning monologue tomorrow. I'm going to do a bit of a roundup. And I did some maths earlier today. How many? Well, I'm not even going to ask you to answer the question. We did last year 225 episodes of this. 225, which is as many as we did at the very, very height of COVID. I don't know how we did it, but 225 episodes of that show. So based on those maths, I reckon we probably hit show 1000 June, July time. Now, I'm going to lose a bit of time because of Balmer. I'll lose an entire week for Balmer. There's some other bits and pieces coming up. But all things being equal, we should hit the 1000 by the summer of next year. At which point, as I've been saying all along, we rebranded at 100 shows. We rebranded at 250. We rebranded at 500. So the next big rebrand, a big change in how things look and everything else. Yes, we will be looking and sounding very, very different come then. Dan Cullen says, how's your buy me a coffee going? Well, I don't want to say too much, Dan, because I'm trying to keep it a secret from you know who. But 400 quid? Yeah. And it's going to be going out on Saturday. I won't bore you with the details, but getting it out is not proved particularly easy. But yeah, 400 quid. So for those of you that know, well done, and thank you very much in advance. Ken Hatcher is here as well, and he is, I think Ken has actually got every known bit of weather you could possibly have. He apparently has sun and rain and cloud and rain and sun and cold. Just need a bit of snow mixed into there. Chris Ford is here. Morning, Chris. How are you doing, my friend? Why don't you let people come on live for a minute to wish us all a Merry Christmas? I can do that. Listen, tomorrow's my last show. I do have a thing that I want to do at the end of the show in the usual manner, and I will be doing that. But if anybody wants to pop on, you could do that. You could do that. Not a problem at all. Excuse me. This will be my Christmas show number 3, 2022, 23 and 24. It's unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, bearing in mind, when March rolls around, this show will be 5 years old. 5 years old. And 851 shows. That's fantastic to everyone that's chipped in. Yes, it is. I want to get it complete and get it I know I'm talking in code here, Dan, but you know what I'm doing. I will get it sorted. Once it's done, I will go back and say a big personal thank you to everybody that's contributed. But honestly, you kind of make me feel a bit warm and fuzzy sometimes. So thank you very much indeed for that. Anyway, that's enough of all that old nonsense. How about we actually get the show underway? Because that's what you've all turned up for, not to listen to me waffle on or put the wrong border up. So I'm going to take away the music from the background because we don't need that anymore. That's that. Peter McKenna says, ho, 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 Merry Christmas to one and all. I'm sure he did it in that voice as well. And we're going to our first Xmas party at 11 o'clock tomorrow. Well, in that case, I'll try and get the main part of the show done so that you can be part of it, Dan. Not a problem at all. So, yes, it is that time. Let me go back to the top of my screen here. It is time for me to roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show, the penultimate one of 2024, on the road. Yeah, I just tried to do my best Peter McKenna impression, but apparently he says I was more horse than that. I've been poo all week, so let me try it again. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas, one and all. So yes, I've already posted our question of the day. I'll remind you of that in just a moment, but it is Thursday, the 19th of December. We're nearly there, nearly at the finish line. It's within touching distance. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Father Christmas of Demolition. In today's show, Shantui unleashes a new excavator. It unleashed a new dozer yesterday. It's an excavator today. We've got some Texan demolition action, which is, you can imagine, is quite big. We get the lowdown on Komatsu's mining dozer range, and we're going to bring you the sound of demolition. Yeah, the sound of demolition. There's pictures, there's imageries, but it's the sound. Plus, in my morning monologue today, in memoriam, the companies we lost in 2024 and why things need to change if we're to avoid a repeat in 2025. Yes. But before we get to all of that, there is a small matter of today's mystery machine. So let me play this. Nice and easy one today. Well, I say that. Maybe not. This is the machine I need you to identify. I'm not sure that border is going to be very helpful today. Let me get that out of the way. There you are. I tell you what, let's replace it with a bit of snow on the roof. There you go. That shouldn't interfere with things too much. That is the machine. I need a make and a model, if you would be so kind. That's what we're after. If you've got any notion on what that might be, please, please let me know. While you're trying to identify that, let me take that off the screen because I do need to very quickly remind you of our question of the day, which is... Yeah, we're sticking with the festive theme because otherwise I would look even more ridiculous sat here wearing this hat. My question of the day today is, what is your favourite Christmas tradition? We've already had some answers, which I'll go over to in a second. But are you all about the quick snog under the mistletoe? Do you wait all year to scoff mince pies? Do you still put a sixpence in your Christmas pud? Do you look forward to the jokes in your Christmas crackers, or is there something else? Now, and I'll get to yours in just a moment. There was one in my house when I was growing up. Obviously doesn't happen anymore. But our house, which was actually a flat, was inverted. So you went in the front door, and there was a bathroom and there were two bedrooms, myself and my sister. And then you went downstairs to the front room and the kitchen and everything else. because my parents didn't particularly trust myself and my sister to not open Christmas presents before they woke up, we had this, what do they call it? Like a leaf table, the folding table. And my dad, on Christmas Eve, last thing at Christmas Eve, he used to put that table in front of the living room door to prevent myself and my sister getting in there and finding out what Santa had left. Kind of miss that. We never found a way to bypass it, because the moment you touched it, it clanked and everyone was aware. So going back to the chat, what have we got? I'm going to say good morning to Mick while we're here. Thank you very much indeed for being here, Mick. Wouldn't be a show without you. Ken Hatcher, is there a better tradition than the Christmas dinner itself? And I've got to be honest. I mean, I spend 364 days a year trying to avoid roast dinners. They don't do it for me. I'm not particularly I quite like foreign food. I like spicy food. I like food that's really packed with flavour, and I always find roast dinners quite bland. But when Christmas Day rolls around, I will eat my body weight in turkey and all the trimmings. So yeah, quite agree with that. Question today: used to be meeting with all the family for food and drink, but now Mum and Dad have gone. It's gone by the wayside. I've got to be honest, Peter. My parents both passed in 2022. 2022's Christmas was all right. We sort of raised a glass and everything else. 2023, we did the same thing again. Don't know why, but really missing them this year. And two of my four children have now moved out, so the house is that bit quieter. And we've always had a tradition, because I won't bore you with the details, but Christmas Day here has always been me, wife, children, and my in-laws. And then Boxing Day was me, wife, children, and my parents. Boxing Day now doesn't work that way, and it does feel like a big hole. So I fully understand that, Peter. Question today: watching a Christmas movie on Christmas Eve with the family wearing festive PJs. Yeah, there's a bit of that goes on here. I'm not one for festive PJs. I'm more tracksuit bottoms and a dirty T-shirt, to be perfectly honest with you. That's more my look. Dan Cullen, looking forward to this. Question of the day: when I was young, the family and close friends used to take turns in providing a tea, followed by a game of cards. Yeah, we have. I don't take part because I've never learnt the rules, because I'm like that. But my in-laws every year bring with them a board game called Rummy Cup. Has anyone ever heard of Rummy Cup? I don't know how it works. I don't know the rules. I know there are tiles involved and stuff like that, but they all sit around. My eldest son cheats every year. Everyone knows he's going to, and I sit there watching a Christmas movie, It's a Wonderful Life, tears rolling down my face, and next door from the dining room, I can hear peals of laughter. Another Christmas tradition, me not taking part in board games. What a miserable sod, eh? Right, Mystery Machine. Let's go back to that very quickly. First guess was this: Hitachi ZX30. It is not one of those. Gary Muirhead is going for an SE25 from Sunwald. Dan Cullen clearly believes he's onto something with Hitachi. He goes for the ZX55U. He also goes for the ZX48U. He also goes for the ZX26U and the ZX33U. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, Dan, but it's not Hitachi at all. It's none of those things. Jim Turner says on the not the Mystery Machine, the question of the day, it was always Monopoly on Christmas night. Usually went on for at least 5 or 6 hours with a break for some supper. Yeah, there's another thing, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this. The Christmas dinner itself, great, absolutely great. I wouldn't change it for the world. But the cold turkey, either that evening, if you've still got room, or the following day, cold turkey, I'm all about the cold turkey. Question of the day: what is your favourite Christmas tradition? And according to Mick, it's saying, thank fuck that's over and done with at midnight. Well, I've got to be honest with you. And I know I'm a bit of a curmudgeon at times and stuff. And as I say, I am missing my mum and dad this year for reasons I don't fully understand. But we've got my in-laws coming here. We've got all the kids gathered, apart from one, all the kids here on Christmas Day with the in-laws. Fantastic. Boxing Day, we're going to the missing child, my eldest daughter. We're going there that's where my grandchildren reside. So I'm going there for Boxing Day. But really and truly, I think my Christmas starts on the 27th. I've basically got to make it through Christmas dinner, Boxing Day, and then I can actually put my feet up and think, bit of me time at long last. Dan Cullen, I'll be watching Netflix on my own, in my own room. I rent a bit of shopping over the weekend as Mrs. working over the Christmas. Hadn't had a Christmas dinner in a few years. Yeah, as I say, I wouldn't necessarily miss it. No, it's a lie. I wouldn't miss the food, but the tradition of it, absolutely. Footy, and I don't think I'm the same as this, but I hope everything goes all right for everyone. I'm not interested in Christmas, not been since I got to 18, so hope everything goes well for everyone. I've got to admit, I'm not one of those people that doesn't like Christmas. I do like Christmas and so on down the line, but I personally think that Christmas without children is kind of not worth doing. You know, I mean, probably the best bit of Christmas now is going to be with the grandchildren on Boxing Day. But the actual day itself, you know, I don't suppose we'll see Fred much before Christmas dinner is served. So, it's all part of the deal, isn't it? So going back to the Mystery Machine, we've got Gary Muirhead reckons it could be a Komatsu PC55. It's not. Dan Cullen's going for Kobelco SK17SR. Peter McKenna's going for the SV60-6B from Yanmar. It's not. Chris Ford is going for a Bobcat 27E. It's not, but you do have the right manufacturer, I'll tell you that much. Peter McKenna going for the Yanmar 3 V3-7S. It's not a Yanmar. It is most definitely a Bobcat, but I need to know what type. There you are. There's a little bit more to be going on with. We're now 18 minutes into the show, and I've not played a single film, so I think it's about time I did that. If you were here yesterday, and I know a lot of you actually were, we brought you details of a brand spanking new dozer from Shantui, battery electric, if I remember rightly. Well, they're not resting on their laurels with that because they've also got a new excavator to talk about, and it looks like this. And if you weren't awake before, you probably are now. Thank you for that, to the fine folks over at Shantui. That certainly got me alive and awake. Mick says, got to the stage, I don't even like my own kids, let alone anyone else's. The Helm makes up for them and a lot cheaper. Yeah, I must admit that the dog walk on a Christmas day, it's not a tradition, but it is something I look forward to. You know, when there's bedlam here, just stick their leads on, go out into very quiet streets, because children don't do the whole skateboard, bicycle, frisbee stuff anymore, do they? They're all playing PlayStation indoors. So I have the streets to myself, which is very, very nice indeed. I've got a bit of breaking news. I should have a bit of a fanfare. Do I have a fanfare? Bear with me 1 second. Not exactly, but I've got this. Breaking news. I don't know if you could hear that, but yeah, we've got a bit of breaking news. Just come through from the fine folks at the CITB, the Construction Industry Training Board, has announced today new dates for its consensus process. The procedure will now start on the 17th of March 2025 and continue till the 9th of May. The 5-week move allows for publication of the ITB review, now anticipated in early 2025, to enable the CITB to give due consideration to the review's recommendations. For those of you that don't know, the consensus with the CITB, basically once every 3 years, they go out to all of their members um, they're levy-paying members, and they say, do we carry on with this? Or are you finally, after all these years, have you finally had enough? And every year, the industry gathers around and says, the CITB, they're shit. And then the vote comes in, the CITB are going again. Bizarre, but that's how it works. But they've pushed it back. It was supposed to be, the consensus was supposed to begin in February next year. It's now beginning in March to allow this ITB report to be published. Don't know what that's all about. Maybe just a stay of execution. Honestly, don't know, but that's the breaking news. BMC Groundworks over on Instagram just joined us. Mostly Diggers has just joined us, and Vex Guard have just joined us, and Peter Dean has just joined us as well. Good morning to you, one and all. Going back to the Mystery Machine, obviously unleashed. Lots of people looking at the Bobcat website right now. Peter's going for the Bobcat E19. It is not. The Bobcat L65 or I65, not sure, or the L95. Bobcat 6-tonner, says Peter McKenna. No, it's none of those things. The L65 or the L85, nope. Bobcat E60, it's not one of those. And Mick says, Grinch, you ain't heard nothing. Right, let me show you a bit more of the machine. There you are. I'm sure the red on the wheel would have told you it was a Bobcat if I hadn't told you that already. But we've got, well, we've not really got the right type of machine yet. That's a clue. Keep the guesses coming. Let me go back to the top here because I need to play a thing. Yeah, we're going to Texas in a minute. Why wouldn't we? Back right after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, I was sent a link to this video yesterday, and I thought, yeah, I'm having that. That looks bloody good. This is a company called Lloyd Neighbors over in the States, and they are busy over in Texas. Check this out. Yeah, top work by Lloyd Neighbors. The Love Field Hotel was what was being demolished there. Anybody else thinks that sounds like the sort of hotel where they rent rooms by the hour? The Love Field Hotel? Maybe it's just me. Maybe I've just got one of those minds. I can tell you we do have a winner on the Mystery Machine. A bit of a surprise winner and a welcome one nonetheless. But we're going to go over to Footy first, who says this. Can't stand turkey. I'd rather have a nice piece of beef as long as it's pink in the centre. Yeah, I don't really do much in the way of red meat these days. Can't digest it. Seems to get to about there, and there it stops for days. So, yeah. CSW, our friend Craig. Very good vid that. I totally agree. How are you doing, Craig, my old mate? Good to see you here. Mick says, tidy job. Most definitely a tidy job. Now, I've said we have a winner of the Mystery Machine, and that winner is, well, it's not Chris Ford, who's had a bit of a run recently. It's not Dan Cullen, who has had several months of run. It is, in fact, Mr. Peter McKenna, who correctly identified that as one of those. That is a Bobcat TL 43.80. Yeah, just to prove it, just to prove that neither myself or Peter are winding you up. There you are. It is indeed the TL. The TL 43.80 telescopic handler in an unfamiliar black. I thought that might throw you off the off the scent a little bit. Apparently it didn't. And Peter McKenna is busily jumping for joy. And going back to footy, as long as I get some horseradish with the beef. Horseradish and wasabi. You know, the stuff that goes up your hooter and clears your tubes. Love all of that. Well done, Peter, says Gary. See, even though he's on his sickbed, even though he's feeling poorly, even though he's probably coughing and wheezing like a good one, he still came to the party and won. Bloody good tool that, he says. And Dan Cullen says, well done, Pedro. Well done indeed. We will return in just a moment with a bit of Komatsu mining dozers in actual fact. Back after this. I can't even begin to tell you how annoying this thing here is. That's better. Can you still see that I'm wearing a Christmas hat, or do I just look like I've got really weird hair? I'm not entirely sure, and I don't care. It is almost Christmas. Never mind. So yes, Komatsu mining dozers. We love a Komatsu mining dozer, and this is what they look like. There's no sound on that. There's no sound on that at all. Not sure what's happened there, to be perfectly honest with you. I think we'll come back to that, and I'm not entirely sure if I'll be able to do it in the background. If I can, I will, but I'd rather you got the full experience on that, so that's not great at all. Let me play this, and we'll finish with something that does actually have some sound.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Now, I've no idea how or if this works. I won't bore you with it, but I've got a video there of the Komatsu dozers. I've also got the ability to play music in the background. Now, one may overwrite the other, but if you bear with me, I'm going to try that video again, and I'm going to try switching on some music. If it works, I'll keep it playing. If not, I may have to hold over until tomorrow. So here we go with the video. Did you hear the music? I could hear it, but then I've got these in-ear monitors, and I've got different feeds coming into my head. I won't even bore you with the details, but could you let me know if you could hear the music? Now, what do we got here? Mick says, getting a bit polite, Peter McKenna, and Peter McKenna responds, "Why, thank you. What, am I not always polite? I always think you are. We could hear the music. Thanks, Peter. Thank you for letting me know. If that goes completely wrong again, at least I know there is a fix for it." 4.5 years in, nearly 5 years in, and I'm still learning the system. Nice kit. The dog's bollocks, says Dan Cullen. It is indeed. We've got one more thing for you, which is good. I'm hoping the sound plays on this because it's the actual purpose of playing it. So I'll be back after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Just want to say a very quick good morning to RG Hire and Demolition over on Instagram, and to somebody called Great White Shark, which is a fantastic name. Scary animal, great name. Yes, so Demolition and construction, but Demolition, let's talk about Demolition. Demolition has a language all its own. I think you'd agree with that. It also has a smell all its own. You know that whiff of diesel and grease and demolished concrete. It's got a whiff all its own. But Demolition has also got a sound all its own. And it sounds like this. Obviously, the sound of wine corks popping is not generally heard on demolition sites, at least I hope not, although from all I hear while doing this show, they may well be, but yeah, really, really smart. Do like that sound. I think we need to do a bit more of that when me and Fred are out. Obviously, we've got the audio gear with us. I think we need to record a bit more audio. I do enjoy putting music to these things, but I'd love to have a bit of that. The dinosaurs are attacking the world again. I think he's talking about excavators, could well be talking about the government or the NFDC or anything like that. He also says the police caught 2 large vans full of diesel beginning of the week around Brum. They reckon it was stolen from HS2. Oy vey, says Mick, as if Hamas was not enough. Quite. Right, that's about it for the main part of this morning's show. And as I've already pointed out, it is the penultimate show of 2025. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, then please do stay safe, because it is nearly Christmas and you do want to spend it with your loved ones. Look after yourself, your family, your friends and your colleagues. I hope to see you going very soon, ideally tomorrow for the final show of the year. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I will be back in just a moment. I'm going to address this one quickly. Did Jim Turner's friend ever finish the show song? If he has, he hasn't shared it with me. That's all I'm saying. And I realise he's doing it as a bit of a favour, so I can't get too upset about it. But bearing in mind with the 1,000th show coming up in about 6 months, maybe we'll have it for then. In actual fact, I've got a friend of mine who is a musician, once played with the Pretenders. If anyone's old enough to remember the Pretenders. Yes, my mate Nick is actually going to be writing or composing a new show theme for us. Yeah, for our 1000th show. It's a long way off. He's got plenty of time to work on it. So it better be good, Dino, if you're watching. He probably isn't. I'll be back in just a moment with our morning monologue. At the Oscars awards ceremony each year, the Academy of Motion Pictures pays homage to those of its members that passed away in the previous 12 months. And we're about to do the same, only we're not paying homage to members or individuals. Our In Memoriam segment is a remembrance of the many, many demolition and construction companies we lost in 2024. Beck Interiors, Blenheim House, Bluecon, Bowie Construction, C.G. Godfrey, Corbin, Dutchy Plant, ESS Modular, Ever Ready Mix Concrete, Fileturn, Gallant, Jeffrey Osborne, Go Modular, Go Plant, Halsell Construction, ISG, Mixit Concrete, M Price, McCormack Demolition, Octagon Developments, Paramount, Redhead Demolition, Rye Demolition, Troy Central, Type 10, Waldridge. Well, that's just 25 demolition and... I'll do that bit again. That's just 25 demolition and construction companies that we said goodbye to in 2024. 25 out of more than 4,200 that folded in a single year. I'll save you doing the maths. That means we've lost just over 11 demolition and construction companies on each of the 365 days of 2024. Think about that for a second. More than 4,200 director dreams dashed. Employees left without a job. The supply chain subjected to blow after devastating blow. It's easy, tempting even, to lay the blame for this catastrophic loss at the feet of the founders and the directors of that 4,200 plus firms. I'm sure if we dug deep enough, you would find some poor decision making, a lack of planning, failure to diversify and move with the times. You might also discover that some of those company founders were driven by a dream that their knowledge, business acumen, and experience could never deliver. But the fact that well over 4,000 companies went to the big site meeting in the sky in a single year suggests that there's something else to blame, something more insidious, something more pernicious and systemic. Behind every closure lies a tapestry of failure, not just of businesses, but of policy, foresight, and accountability. The roots of this crisis are deep and tangled, stretching back years. Brexit, with all its promises of sovereignty and economic revival, left in its wake a fractured supply chain and a dwindling labour force. The free movement of skilled workers, once the lifeblood of UK construction, was curtailed, leaving gaping holes in the workforce that domestic training programmes have failed to fill. The shortage of materials, exacerbated by import delays and increased tariffs, drove costs sky high. For many companies, projects became untenable long before a single brick was laid. And then the COVID-19 pandemic, a crisis that brought the world to a standstill. The construction sector did not escape unscathed. Despite being awarded key worker status, sites closed, projects stalled, and demand plummeted as uncertainty gripped the nation. While some industries saw a tentative recovery, construction found itself shackled to long-term contracts inked before the pandemic, with no room to renegotiate in light of the new economic realities. By the time the dust settled, many firms were already teetering on the edge, their reserves depleted and their futures uncertain. Inflation then became the silent executioner. The price of everything, steel, concrete, timber, fuel, soared to unprecedented levels. For contractors who often operate on razor-thin margins, these increases were unsustainable. Bids submitted months or even years prior became financial traps, locking companies into obligations they could no longer afford. And wages, driven up by competition for scarce labour, became another unbearable weight. For many, the maths no longer worked. Expenses outpaced income and insolvency became inevitable. The loss of the red diesel subsidy was another nail in the coffin. For decades, this subsidy provided a crucial financial cushion for the industry. When it was removed, operating costs surged overnight and equipment became significantly more expensive to run. Companies already struggling with rising costs were now forced to absorb this additional burden or pass it on to clients, risking the loss of contracts. But these are only the surface-level symptoms of a deeper malaise. Beneath them lies a systemic rot, the short-termism that pervades the industry. Too many companies have been content to chase the lowest bid, slashing their margins to the bone in the hope of securing contracts. This race to the bottom, while profitable for clients in the short term, has hollowed out the sector. Companies have sacrificed resilience for survival, leaving themselves with no room to maneuver when crisis strikes. Clients, too, bear their share of the blame. Many have pushed for unrealistic deadlines and unsustainable cost savings, forcing contractors into impossible positions. The power imbalance between clients and contractors has grown stark, with the latter often shouldering the financial and legal risks of projects. When things go wrong, and in this volatile environment they often do, it's the contractor who pays the price. And let's not forget the government. Policies have been reactive rather than proactive, lurching from one crisis to the next without addressing the structural issues that have plagued the industry for years. The removal of the red diesel subsidy, while presented as an environmental measure, was implemented without a viable alternative for the industry. Brexit negotiations, marked by hubris and short-sightedness, left the construction sector dangling in the wind. And while grants and loans were doled out during the pandemic, they were a band-aid on a gaping wound, providing temporary relief without solving the underlying problems. The result? A record number of insolvencies, each one a story of dreams dashed, livelihoods lost, and communities and families left to grapple with the aftermath. For every company that folded, there are workers who now find themselves unemployed, suppliers who went unpaid, and projects that remain unfinished. The ripple effects are profound, extending far beyond the immediate losses to erode trust in an industry already struggling with its public image. And what of the survivors? Many are hanging on by a thread, juggling mounting debts and shrinking profit margins. The pressures that crush their competitors still loom large, and there's little to suggest that the tide will turn anytime soon. The industry, once a symbol of progress and innovation, now finds itself trapped in a cycle of decline, its foundations crumbling under the weight of systemic neglect. There is no neat resolution to this story, no hopeful note to end on. The record number of insolvencies in 2024 is not an anomaly, it's a warning. Without meaningful change in policy, in practice, and in mindset, this will not be the last time we witness such devastation. And so, as we prepare to bid farewell to 2024, the question remains: how many more companies must fall before we confront the uncomfortable truths that brought us here? There's a nice cheery end to the year for you. 4,200, I think it was 4,268 companies folded during the year, 11 a day. 11 a day for 365 days. Just an astonishing figure. Demolition news, I've got me the Demolition blues. I've still got your song here somewhere, Chris. Go Plant, the one owned by David Wilson. If that one is gone, it won't have actually gone bust, says Jim Turner. I'll come back to that. I don't know. I basically did a bit of research on Construction Inquirer, Construction Index yesterday, and Go Plant was one of the names that came up. Not entirely sure. No, that little swine, I'm going to say. Josh Allen didn't do the song. Josh Allen, pull your bloody finger out. I was thinking about this. As far as I'm aware, and if you know otherwise, please tell me. As far as I'm aware, no company actually succumbed to insolvency as a direct result of the loss of the red diesel subsidy. However, here was my thought on it. If you are operating on the basis of a subsidy. If you're only in profit because of a subsidy, there's something fundamentally wrong with your business or your industry. And I realise some in the farming community receive a subsidy to grow certain things or to produce certain things and what have you. But I would say the same about them. If you are operating based purely or based partly on a subsidy, knowing full well that subsidy could be removed at any moment, do you actually have a viable business? And I will go back to the beginning because I'm very keen. I know some of the people that are involved in companies that went down the pan over the past year. Some people I have an enormous amount of respect for. And some of them, particularly in demolition, were victims of things that were happening higher up the supply chain. People have gone pop, they didn't get paid, they went pop. So I fully understand that. But I wonder, I should have changed my hat for that, by the way. I do wonder if we are testing ourselves properly. Just because somebody comes up with a bright idea to start a demolition company or a construction company or a plant hire company or a groundworking company, they might be really good at operating machines. They might be really good at planning projects and managing projects and stuff like that. Does that actually mean that they are good at running a business? I'm not so sure. But I think ultimately a lot of this comes down to timing as much as anything else. When you think about all that the industry has been through Brexit, obviously we had a lot of people going back home from whence they came across sort of Eastern Europe and beyond as a result of the Brexit vote. And then obviously we had COVID. And I realised that we had the benefit of being key workers, or you had the benefits of being key workers, if that were a benefit. I'm not entirely sure it was, but we had that. But that's two once in a lifetime whammies in quick succession. What were they? A couple of years apart. That's a lot to withstand. And maybe I don't know, but I do wonder. With that in mind, I wonder if we should have seen this coming as an industry, as a nation. When you think about the impact of Brexit, and then 2 years later we have the impact of the COVID and the lockdown and everything that went with it, maybe we should have expected so many insolvencies. And things like bounce back loans didn't do the job. And with hindsight, should they have tried to? I don't know. And I understand that the desire of the government was to keep the wheels of industry turning, and construction is a key contributor to GDP and so on down the line. But was it really the way to go? I'm not so sure. I mean, the system was widely abused. Well, it was widely abused across the board, but certainly abused in the construction sector. Lots and lots of people now facing charges and court appearances because they failed to pay back the loan, or because they took the loan under false pretenses and so on down the line. But I think what that proves is that the industry itself is fundamentally, at best, flawed, at worst, broken. You cannot operate on margins as thin as some demolition and construction companies are, because there's no room to maneuver. God forbid we have another pandemic. God forbid we have another game changer like Brexit. There's nowhere to go. If you're only scratching 1%, 2%, 3% profit margins, you've got nothing left. There's nowhere to go. And unfortunately, that seems to be the shortcut to work. Times have been tough for the last couple of years. I mean, basically since the end of COVID, it's been tough. Last year, or the last 12 months has been very, very tough indeed. And I think we've just reverted to the same thing that we do time and time again. It's tough out there. Let me cut my costs. Let me cut my margins. And it's unsustainable. You can't do that. You can't run a business without staff, even if they're not directly employed. You can't run without staff. You need to keep your training up. You need to keep your insurance up. You need to keep your fuel spend up in order to do everything that you need to do. And all of that requires cash. That cash is basically the lifeblood of your business. And every time you undercut your local competitor, every time you try to appease a client by going under, what you expect to be the bid price, you are asking for trouble. You're basically the only person you're stitching up. It's not your competitor, it's yourself. Because not only will you be doing the job undervalued that time, but that client will expect that going forward. And that will be your rate going forward with that particular client. But 4,200 companies, 11 a day for 365 days a year. And I say this a lot. Where's the outcry? Where is the outcry? Where is the industry trade bodies shouting and stamping their feet and banging their fists on the desk? Where is the trade media calling out those that have contributed to such a devastating loss of companies? Where are they? Because I don't see it. I don't see it at all. I'm so frustrated by the ambivalence of the industry. And I mean the industry as in those that do the work, those that preside over the work, those that report on the work. 4,200 companies have gone bust. Yeah, well, 2025, let's see what happens then. Well, probably the same again. Where's the outcry? Where's the outrage? Where's the anger? Where's the consternation? It doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. And going back to the beginning of the year, I'm doing this off the top of my head, but you might remember that we lost Squib Group about this time last year. So that would have been a 2023 collapse. But by March 2024, we'd lost another 6 demolition companies. Now, demolition is not that big. Demolition is only 550 companies in the UK. So to lose 6 in 3 months, it's quite a big deal. And nobody batted an eyelid. Tristan Mays over at that Crane Hub just said, unions are useless in the UK. After dealing with unions in America, we have it all wrong. Every time I mention the word union, I have to think back to my experience with unions, and it wasn't great. I've left 2, wouldn't go back. But when you think about that figure, that headline figure, 4,200 companies went pop. Now, even suggesting that on average, now bearing in mind there were people like ISG in there who would employ a lot more, but even if you thought those companies employed, let's say, an average of 5 people, that's 22,000 people who at some point this past year were rendered unemployed from a demolition or a construction company. 22,000 people. And as I say, bearing in mind we had people like ISG among that number, Jeffrey Osborne among that number. Some of these would have employed a lot more than 5 or 10 people. We may well have laid off 50, 60, 100,000 people in the past year. How is that not headline news? We tend, as a nation, we tend to get awfully excited about high street retailers going tits up, Woolworths, for example, and so on. But where is the outcry about this? Where is the outrage? Why are we so willing to take this? I keep going back to the notion that I explained yesterday. Demolition lost half a dozen companies in the course of 12 months. Nobody's going to make a big song and dance about that because it's just half a dozen companies. Might have been a few hundred people, just a few hundred, but half a dozen. But you then extrapolate that out across construction, demolition, and all the allied industry sectors, be it landscaping, heating and ventilating, electricians and stuff. You could quite easily come up with 100,000 people that lost their jobs. 100,000 people rendered unemployed. And they've been rendered unemployed, yes, by inflation, yes, by poor government decisions, yes, by Brexit, yes, by COVID. But a strong, stable industry could have and should have withstood that. Even though, as I've said, COVID and Brexit back to back, that's a once in a lifetime, twice in 2 years. I understand that, but a state, bearing in mind the retailers, we've lost a few. Think about the hotel business or the hospitality business. Never mind Rishi Sunak's ill-fated eat out to help out and all that tosh. You think, I came back from Las Vegas when COVID hit America. And the day after I left, the hotel that I was staying in, which will comfortably accommodate 3,000 plus people, it might even be 3,000 rooms, so it might even be 10,000 people it will accommodate, that was empty. And it stayed empty for the best part of 2 years. And yet the Luxor is still there. Caesar's Palace is still there. New York is still there. The Bellagio is still there. In construction, they're not. And they're not because they were already crumbling under the pressure of wafer-thin margins and overly demanding clients. Gary Muirhead says, sounds like 2024 was a good year for bankruptcy companies. Yeah, well, I've got to be honest. There is a company that specialises in insolvencies called Begbie's Trainer. I think they're based up in Manchester or thereabouts. I've probably typed the word Begbie's or the words Begbie's Trainer as much as I've typed the name of any demolition company this year. That tells you something. Mick says, there are no friends in business nor allies. Always remember old Dick Ashton saying, when you have enough to get out, and when you've made enough, get out, or you'll just plough it back in and dwindle it to nothing. Yeah. But even that, it just feels so. When I realise that the temptation with all these things is always to look at the plight of the employees who have been left unemployed, and the plight of the supply chain that's been hit. And I realise that there will be, amongst that 4,200 and whatever it was, there will have been some unscrupulous company bosses who have, feathered their own nest and said, fuck everyone else and just buggered off to the Bahamas. But that's not all of them. There will be some among that number who dreamed of owning their own demolition or construction company that pulled themselves up by the bootstraps. They've borrowed money from their parents or their in-laws. They've remortgaged the house. They've worked 7 days a week, 365 days a year, not taken a day off in years and years and years. They've put their life, soul, blood, sweat and tears into starting and managing a demolition or construction company just for some hairy-ass twat at the top of the supply chain or in government to pull the rug out from under them. It just beggars belief. And as I say, the bounce back loan thing, I think it's, in addition to being a failed system, I think it's also shone a light on the ongoing, for want of a better word, corruption that exists in this industry. Obviously, there was a big song and dance about the CMA investigation, £60 million in fines for bid rigging and collusion. But unless I'm very much mistaken, I'm sure I read this somewhere, construction was the worst abuser of the C-bills and the bounce-back loans. The number of people that took out, within this industry, that took out those loans and took out those financial props, either to line their own pockets or to not pay them back. And the line in their own pockets, that goes to show, I know of one case allied to the demolition industry who received, I think it was 50K, and it landed in their bank account one day. It was in his bank account the next. That's not what it was for. It was to keep your staff on board and to keep the wheels turning and stuff. That wasn't what it was for. Lone Star Demolition, good morning to you. Are you in Texas? Are you in the Lone Star State? That's what we'd like to know. But good morning to you, wherever you are. And if you are in Texas. I'm very envious. I'd like to be in Texas right now. More work for us. It's a relentless industry. No one goes and says, let's stick together and hold developers to account. If the industry stuck together, the country would stand still. And maybe it needs to. Maybe it needs that wake-up call. You know, as such a big contributor to the national economy, to the GDP and everything else, and the fact that we provide, I say we, I'm using the royal we, the fact that the industry provides schools, hospitals, doctors' surgeries, roads, bridges, railways, airports, it provides all of those things. If the industry could combine as one, not like the rail industry, because, you know, there's a lot of people that never set foot on a train. So the rail strike, if you're one of those people that drives to work each and every day, the rail strike is happening over there and you honestly don't give two fucks about it. You couldn't give a toss. If, however, the construction industry, so the road outside your house started to fall apart, your kid's school was falling down, you went to hospital and part of it was closed because nobody had maintained it, that'd get their attention a lot quicker. And apparently Lone Star Demo is in Texas. No, it wasn't the best guess. I mean, the clue was in the title, but good morning. Or should I say, howdy. I can't pull that off with this accent, but good day to you. Thank you very much indeed. It must be early in Texas. Must be very early in Texas. Dan Cullen says, as transport depends on construction, housing, rail, shops, cafes, construction could do more damage to rail driver strikes. Yes, absolutely. And I'm not for one moment suggesting that we should be doing damage. But I do think to give the nation and its government and clients a wake-up call, we've had enough. We're going to take a week off. See how you feel. Supply chains should be held account for rising prices. There is a constant source of frustration with that. And I tend to see it most specifically with things like energy and fuel. We have a spike in fuel prices or a spike in energy prices, normally related to something outside of the UK. You know, there's a rupture in a pipeline somewhere, so we can't get our oil or gas, or I don't know, a ship breaks down in the Suez Canal, so we can't get our diesel. But I'm making this up as I go along. So the price spikes, and it's national news. The price has spiked. It's gone to £87 a litre for diesel, he said, exaggerating slightly. But what happens after that? Why do we, once that is over and done with, those that are importing the fuel or the energy or whatever it might be, they see the price go back down again, and yet we don't. Exactly the same with interest rates. When interest rates go up, when it benefits the banks and the financial institutions, they're on it like a shot. When it comes to them going down where where they've got to give something back, they're a bit more slow to do so. Or the other way round. I'm not sure if I explained that correctly, but you get the idea. I think the construction, demolition, and plant hire sector should get on board with the farmers over the IHT debacle. Yeah, I agree. IHT, inheritance tax, by the way, just to be clear. Yeah, I agree. But I said this yesterday, when you think about how that came about. So Rachel Reeves stood up in her budget, we're clamping down on inheritance tax, and the farming industry quickly did the maths and went, fuck me, that's going to cost me a fortune. Hello, is that Dave, my next door neighbour farmer? I think we should storm Westminster. Yeah, get John to come as well, and Pete. And they did that, and they've done it twice now, first on foot, second time in tractors. All the while that's going on, construction, plant hire, and demolition are going, that might hit us. Should we do a thing about it? Well, I think we should probably mention it. I'm not tired. Where the fuck are they? How many farmers are there in the UK? I don't know the answer to that. But even if we said there was, I can't do the maths, but how many people does the farming industry employ? 500,000? 1 million? Even if it's 1 million, construction and demolition is twice that size, 2.5 million. 2.5 million people marching upon Downing Street saying, not this time, pal. No way. We've already been through a cost of living crisis. We've already been through a fuel crisis, an energy crisis, a Brexit crisis, and a COVID crisis. I'll be fucked if I'm going to go through another crisis just to restock your coffers. No way. It's not happening. Mick is leaving us. Catch you later. I need to get my results from the quacks. Good luck with that. Mick, let us know how you get on, please. Dan, if HGV drivers went on strike for 3 days, this country would be bollocksed, but it will never happen. No. And the bit of that I find hardest to stomach is this willingness to look after themselves rather than the greater good. If the HGV drivers did go out on strike, and they did so in unity, the lot of the HGV industry, the heavy haulage industry, could be improved. If 95% of the industry went out on strike and 5% stayed where they were, they have basically undermined the other 95%. The 5% will undermine the 95%. You know, they rub their hands together. Well, while the other 95% are off on strike, we'll keep the wheels turning, and we might actually pick up a bit of money on the way, and we might actually nick a client from somebody. And all the time that mentality exists, we're screwed. And just there you are. Now, 108,000 farmers in the UK in 2024. Now, I wonder if that's 108,000 farmers, actual farmers running farms, or whether that's 108,000 people working in farming. That seems low. I think it's probably farmers. People are concentrating on farmers, but all businesses will be affected. Yes, they will. Yes, they will. And particularly when you think about what we're talking about here is an inheritance tax. So you only have to worry about inheritance tax when you are receiving an inheritance. That tends to be through succession, and that succession is every bit as valid, certainly within demolition. You know, when you look at the 500, the makeup of the 500, 550 demolition companies in the UK, half of them family businesses, started by grandfather, run by son, run by grandson, and so on down the line. You know, you've got companies like, I was talking to Cormac McLean of PDC Demolition the other day. His grandfather came over from Ireland, started a demolition business. That was inherited by Adrian and Noel McLean, sons, and now Cormac McLean, so third generation. And it's so common that it's not even worth talking about. That is pretty much the makeup of a lot of demolition companies. So they are liable every bit as much as the farmers. Jim Turner becoming all radical and stuff. It's not enough marching on Westminster. We need to march on every MP's local office all around the country, all over the same day of the week. Then they'd realise who they need to keep sweet or risk not having a job when the next general election rolls around. Yeah, I wonder. And particularly when you think, and I'm thinking about, obviously construction and demolition takes place everywhere, but when you think about the heft of the farming community in rural and in farming communities, you know, places like Kent and Lincolnshire, you know, where there's a really strong background and a really strong backbone in all things farming, they would get the attention of local MPs really, really swiftly. They really would. Dan Culling is leaving us. Have a great day, guys. Stay safe. Going to a site meeting. Not a problem at all, Dan. I'm going to call it a day now anyway. So yes, that's pretty much that. I'll try to get the recap up in the next bit. Back tomorrow for the last of these shows of 2024, and I am going to end on a more cheery note than I've done today. I promise. You have my word. My word as a journalist, which obviously is worthless, but I will end the year on something a little bit more upbeat. So I hope to see you all tomorrow. If I don't, please have a good Christmas, have a great New Year, and I will hope to see you tomorrow. And I'm going to end in the words of Peter McKenna, who, as we know, is poorly, so I'm going to do it, not with the accent, but I'm going to do it in his voice. We'll catch you tomorrow. Thanks for that, Peter. See you tomorrow. All the best.